Welcome on Facebook, welcome on Zoom, welcome on YouTube. It's fantastic to be here with you today. We're going to be digging into, of course, John's wonderful book, The 16 Undeniable Laws of Communication. We're in what? Week 2?
Yes.
Week 2 already. Time flies by when you're having fun. So thanks for joining us live. If you're listening to the replay, we're live 10 a.m. Eastern. Now, those of you who are on live with us, you get that. We rebroadcast 10 a.m. Sunday morning, tomorrow on YouTube. Who was it that suggested that?
Kathleen Seals, I think.
Kathleen, yeah. And I didn't realise that, but on YouTube, you can go up and you can speed it up and you can fast. So you can skip through my bits and get to the good bits. So YouTube allows you to do that. So we restream 10 a.m. On Sunday, so tomorrow morning, but mainly 10 a.m. for the Facebook people and the people on Zoom. We've got loads of people on Zoom. Put a post up on Zoom and let us know where you're calling from. People posting, hey Belinda, good to see you there. And people on Facebook, put a post up on Facebook as well and let us know where you're calling from.
A comment.
Put a comment up. Put it in the chat. I'm going to use chat universally if I can remember chat. So on Facebook, that means put up a comment. But we'll just call it the chat. Facebook chat. Okay, good. All right. So if you're brand new, maybe you missed last week, we're in week 2, and this is a 16 week for 16 laws. We've got special guests each week. Last week we had, dun, 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 John Maxwell. He was great, of course, as you'd expect. We were talking about law number 1, the law number 7, week number 1, the law of connecting. And this week we've got another special guest, more top tips, modeling John, of course, and our special guests, and some of you as well. We're going to share some videos of you as we go. 16 weeks, an hour a week, 10 a.m. Saturday, restreamed on YouTube, 10 a.m. Sunday. Did I miss anything?
No.
I think that's pretty much it, isn't it? And if you don't know who we are, I'm Roddy, and this is my beautiful wife, Susan.
I didn't know if I was meant to say my name.
I didn't know if you were going to say it.
If you were going to introduce me or not.
And last week, as I said, we were talking about law of connecting. Connectors know it's all about others. Oh! We had a competition, a book giveaway last week. Yeah, so a signed copy of John's book, and we had a winner, and the winner is Deanna Keith.
Well
Congratulations!
Done, Deanna.
Yeah, congratulations. What did Deanna say?
She said, connecting with others opens their heart to hear you and opens your heart to hear them. Connection is a mutual opportunity. If connection doesn't happen, you're just giving information and they're just hearing information. So the question was, which we probably should have started with, was
what was the question?
What does connecting mean to you in communication?
And so we liked Deanna. Loads of you had great answers. No one was wrong. There was no bad answers. They're all great answers. But we had to pick one.
Just like that it's a two-way thing, I think.
Yeah, it's nice. So
Very
thank
good
you,
point.
Deanna. Well done. How does she get her book?
Message me your address.
And we'll
Please.
put it in the post. A signed copy by John. We got him to sign loads. We got another. In fact, if you want to win one, Deanna is a winner from last week. If you want to be a winner this week, then you can win a signed copy. And the question is...
I want to go. Why is credibility such an essential factor in almost all communication?
Almost all communication.
So if you answer that in the chat, it can be in the chat in Zoom, it can be in the chat in Facebook, I read them all, or in YouTube, if you're watching live on YouTube, we'll pick a winner and we'll announce it next week.
Yeah, so even if it's tomorrow for the rebroadcast,
Doesn't matter.
we'll pick
Replay,
them. Yeah.
yeah.
So put a post up. Why is credibility such an why is credibility such an essential factor in almost all communication? What do you think? Put it up, give it some thought. You could be the next winner of a signed copy of John's great book. Now, for those of you who are brand new, as I said, you can go back and listen to last week's stream. It's on Facebook. You can find it on YouTube if you want to speed through a little quicker, and go back and listen to that. If you are new, you don't know who we are. We've been working with John since about 2010 and got to know John very well and worked a lot with John. In fact, traveled to a number of different countries around the world, speaking, communicating, learning from John. John is, of course, I believe, the best person to model if you want to be a great speaker. But then through our association with John, had the opportunity to work with people like Nick Vujicic, Les Brown, Bonnie St. John, Cialdini, Seth Godin, even had the opportunity to learn from Richard Branson. Wonderful opportunities that we had. None of them would have been possible if we tried to do it ourselves. So you need to get help, I think, from people that have done it before. And at the end of this, let's save a few minutes at the end. We'll tell you how, if you want to find out how maybe you can further your journey, if you're interested in making a business out of this, or if you just want to become better as a speaker, a trainer, or a coach, I'll show you at the end how you can do that. A simple, risk-free next step. So we'll talk about that at the end. This week, we're talking about the law of credibility. And the law of credibility, John says the tagline for this chapter, what is it, Suze?
Your most effective message is the one you live.
The one you live, absolutely. So what have you lived out is that kind of key question, isn't it? And if you haven't lived it out, then maybe you're just kind of reciting something. Maybe you don't believe it. If you don't believe it, don't expect anyone else to. If you're not passionate about it, don't expect anyone else to be passionate about it. If you're not inspired by it, don't expect anyone else to be inspired by it. So many, many benefits to speaking on what you've lived out. And I think it's so easy to read like a great book like this book, John's book, and to like, oh, I love the way John says that. And people like remember things, don't they? Take those bits out and then just teach them. Like, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. But it's not the same if you haven't lived it out, is it? So reading and repeating is one thing, but what have you lived out? And then if you relive it rather than teach it for your audience, makes all the difference.
Do you know who teaches this in the book?
Who teaches?
It says Roddy Galbraith.
Oh.
Proud
What
wife.
is that? Well, yeah.
So relive what you've learned, allowing the audience to relive it with you. Well done, babe.
Thanks. Yeah, I probably
Name
got it from
checked in
John.
the book.
Yeah, I
you
got it
probably
from
did.
John. So that's a great question. You know, what shall I speak on? People ask this all the time. John says, people ask me, what shall I speak on? Well, what have you lived out is his answer. What have you lived out? If you don't speak on what you've lived out, your credibility will never be a match for those that do speak on what they've lived out. So it's important it takes a bit more thought, doesn't it? It's easy actually to like read a good book and like take stuff from it that you like, isn't it? And just memorize it and repeat it. But it doesn't have the same feel as somebody speaking from experience.
Yeah, it's a part of you, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you're speaking in a credible way.
Yeah. And if you say to me, I've learned this from experience and this is what I've found, it's very difficult for me to say, well, I don't agree with that. Well, you say, well, that's what I've done. That's what I've found by experience. But if you say, I've heard this and you should do it, and I say, well, I don't agree with that. Why? You're like, well, because it says it here.
Actually, I did have an experience with that. I was reading a post by a very credible expert in her field, but she was commenting on special needs parenting.
Right.
But she wasn't a special needs parent, and she said in the post that she didn't have it. I won't say who it was because I was actually quite annoyed. And she was kind of commenting and saying how mothers should refer to their children.
Yeah.
And I just thought it's not very, you know, she has her area of expertise, but like I'm a mother of a special needs child.
Yeah.
And what she was saying, I didn't feel was right. And by the comments, a lot of people didn't either. And it's kind of like, you know, if you haven't earned the right to speak on something, it just kind of falls a bit flat. I mean, where she was an expert in what she was talking about generally, but not in that.
And also, even if you're right, even if the person commenting is wrong, it's easy for them to challenge you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas if you live it out, and that's a good example, like special needs, because our daughter has special needs, Eliza, as many of you will know, and I often say to people, it's a wonderful experience. It's an amazing experience. It's very, don't get me wrong, it's very hard, very challenging. It's, you know, very challenging. But it's also magical in a way that's different to the other children. You know, there's something very, very special about Eliza, which is almost impossible to explain to people. You have to have experienced it, don't you?
Yeah.
You have to know a child like Eliza, or have a child like Eliza, or a child with special needs, to understand the magic, to be able to get your head around that. And it would be very difficult I wouldn't be able to read that somewhere and say, oh, well, you know, my friend Susan has got a kid with special needs and she says, so therefore you should enjoy your child. You know, if I've got no, you have to speak from a place of experience, doesn't it?
Even if it's true, it
it doesn't,
isn't.
Yeah, it's not right. It's not right. So I think that's a great example. All right, we're talking about credibility. We've got a fantastic...
When I look like this, I'm reading comments, by the way. I'm not doing like weird head like gestures.
Or something, watching the Downton
watching
Abbey
Netflix
repeats.
or something.
We're into Downton Abbey at the moment. I don't know how we didn't see that before, like being English. Anyway.
Makes me miss home.
Yeah. Should we get our special guest on?
Already?
Dun, dun, dun. What do you say already? It's 10 past. Time to fly. This has got to be a military operation, Suze, if we're going to finish on time, which we are absolutely committed to doing. So,
before we have our special guest on, if you felt inclined, maybe just hit the share button.
Oh, yes. We forgot to ask for wow faces.
No, that's okay. They're all very chatty in the chat.
But how do we know they can hear us? Like, hit the wow face if you can hear us.
Well,
That's
I think
my
more
first check.
in terms of sharing the feed, so that
share it with someone that needs help or might be interested.
That would be great.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Good idea. Al says we can hear you. Thank you. And on Facebook, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Hit the wow face.
I think they can hear us. I think we would have had some feedback to this point.
I'm trying to get engagement. I'm trying to get them engaged.
I think it's time for our special guest, and he
Let's
is
bring
a
our
very special guest.
How special is he?
Mark's just Mark Cole. He's CEO of all of John's world companies, and I think he's the right person to speak on credibility.
Right. So pretty special then.
And you'll find that out.
See for yourself. Yeah. Here we go. Well, we've got a real treat for you again. We had John last week, and second best.
Yeah, not by far. Not by far. Not a long way away from second.
Welcome.
We got the CEO of all John's enterprises, I think now, is it? Like everything. Yeah,
everything.
Mark Cole. Thanks for joining us. Thanks
I'm
for
glad
doing
to
this.
be here. Really glad to be here with both of you.
This is amazing. So we thought for you, with John, we asked him what his favourite law was, and he said, well, you know, I haven't really got favourites, but if I did connecting. So we covered connecting with him, which is law number 7. We're going to the beginning of the book with law number 1, credibility.
Yep.
Now, but first of all, before we get into that, like you've known John you've been working for John for 20 years, from the bottom, I think you said, all the way up to the top now. How important has communication been for John in his career?
So you know this, and we'll talk more about your story and how John was wowed by Roddy and Susan, and maybe a little bit later. But it's truly around communication. It's truly around credibility. So I'm really honored to be here with both of you and to be able to share. But John believes that he is a speaker that writes rather than a writer that speaks. I've heard him say that a dozen times, right?
Actually, no, I've never heard him say that.
You've never heard him say that?
Interesting. Yeah,
If Roddy hasn't heard him say it, I've brought something new.
This is an exclusive.
First time ever.
He really says that. He says, I was speaking first, and then out of the speaking, I will read the crowd, and then I would go right on the things that really hit. So John would say that communication is everything, whether you're a speaker, writer, whether you want to communicate a message. For you to have credibility with your message, you need to be able to speak it. You need to be able to communicate it.
Right.
And so I've watched him through the years use his high skill of reading a room or reading a group of people and then perfected the art of communication, the art of writing behind that realization that if I can connect with an audience and I can find something that works with that audience, if I will go work it and spend time with it, then I'll come back and have a lot of credibility.
Absolutely, yeah, and he does work hard at it. That's the thing. He's almost got a sickening work ethic, hasn't he? He works so hard, so industrious all the time.
It's so funny.
But it's so inspiring.
Yeah, exactly.
It is.
At 76.
This morning, as we're taping this, he was, we had a board meeting. And he asked me last night at 11 o'clock, he said, hey, shoot me some bullet points of what I need to share for this board meeting. This is a board meeting. We've got a great year. Everything is good. It's going to be rubber stamped. Not for John. So he asked me to text him at 11 o'clock last night. I texted him about probably a dozen things that he should think about communicating to the board. He worked it into a message he had never done before. And for 45 minutes today, despite crazy technology challenges, he connected with the board so much so that they went, John, we make a motion not to do any board work today, and you keep communicating.
Yeah, keep going.
So he just works hard at the craft.
And he could easily wing it. I think that's the thing that's so admirable.
Yeah.
Admirable.
Thank you. I knew it wasn't right.
Susan has got a lot of work ahead of us today.
But he's the communication guy. Come on.
That's the thing I respect about John
Yeah.
the most. He's like, he works hard, even though he could wing it. I interviewed him in 2015. In fact, last week we played a clip, didn't we, of when he spilt the water on it. That was from 2015.
Yes.
And before that, I said to him, John, would you do a bit of Q&A? And he says, yeah, I'd love to. What are we going to do? And I said, oh, you just come up, tell a few stories, make them laugh, teach a little bit, and they go. And he's like, no, it doesn't work like that. What do they need? How can we help them? What do we want to cover? And we went through and prepared to make sure that he could be at his best. He could easily wing it, and I'm sure he's got lots of other things that he could be doing, but he wants to bring his best to the audience.
He made a decision. You've heard him tell this, no doubt. He made a decision when he first started communicating every weekend. He made a decision because he was communicating at that point with very simple-minded people, but what that means is they had just really worked to keep things very simple. And he realized that with just a little bit of his college prep and college experience that he could impress them. And he made a decision at like 22, 23, Roddy, that he said, I can wing it or I can perfect it and make it better, or I can win at it, is what he says. And he's made a decision. And like I said with the story I just gave, he won't step in front of an audience, a microphone, or a board meeting without knowing what do I want them to know and then working it very diligently.
Yeah,
But
so admirable.
it's not only that he won't wing it, it's also that he is who he shows he is on stage. So he's not one of those speakers that's going and speaking to a crowd and then it's just horrible, which, a lot of people in this industry are not the nicest, or they aren't good to their staff, or they're not kind. They don't really love people in the way that John does, and that makes him even more credible. It's not just the fact that he's so well prepared, it's the fact that he is who he shows
He's
himself.
the real deal. Yeah. I was just going to say that 2 years ago almost, we were at his 75th birthday in wherever it was, West Palm.
West Palm,
West Palm.
Yep.
And do you remember Margaret? Because there was all these like world-class speakers, one after another, were sharing, and then Margaret was last.
Yeah.
And she got up and she said, "Oh, I'm not really used to this, but what you all think he is, that's exactly what he is."
Yeah.
And it was, she was
lovely.
there. She brought the house down.
Well, and let me say this, because I'm going to tell you guys, if you think that John Maxwell loves the Galbraiths, you're not thinking enough. He loves this couple, genuinely. But isn't it true, because we've been together for 13, 14 years now together as partners, isn't it true the closer you get with him, the greater your interaction, the more
you love him.
authentic it is. And trust me on this, if he wasn't real, Susan would let us all know. Because, you have a great intuition about it, and he is. Again, it's so fun that we're talking about this, because it all is about credibility. What you see on stage is what you get behind the stage.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
I love him.
Why do you think credibility is like the first law in the book? Why do you think he started with credibility?
I think if I've learned anything about John, it is that the foundation, and I don't even know, Roddy, if he placed credibility in a intentional way, but he would absolutely say that authenticity, credibility, is the key to communication. It's more important than content. Credibility. Yeah. It's more important than a cool takeaway, that people are more interested in who you are than what you say. And so he just has worked really hard to make sure that people see what you do more than what people believe what you do more than what you say. And there's a lot of people, Roddy, you are a pro at studying communication. There's a lot of us that really struggle with having an image on the stage.
Right.
But then not really worrying that it doesn't match behind the stage.
Yeah.
You've seen way too many. We don't even want to talk about that. But at the same time, when you find somebody that is believable on stage and then you get a chance to connect with them and they're believable behind the stage, man, it makes their message that much greater in the long run.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's so reassuring that John is who he is, I think, isn't it?
And it makes the Maxwell Leadership Certified team even more wonderful because you know it's backed by this
statesman.
wonderful, credible. Well, he is a statesman, but he's also a good man. He's a good person. He's kind. He's loving. He wants what's best for people. And who better to lead?
I was telling John, he was here last week, as you guys all know. And by the way, if you don't know, you need to go back and listen to it. It's available, right?
Yeah.
And so I was telling John today that I was coming to be with you guys. And he said, Mark, it's not an accident. You're going to love this. This is really what he said. He said, it's not an accident that of all the people that have come and gone, the Galbraiths are still here. He said, because they have credibility. Oh. He said, they last. He said, anybody can step in for a minute or two and lift the lid and make a difference. He said, but it's the people that last that make a difference. We almost got Susan crying right here. But that's what he said. He said, they last because they're credible. Here we're talking about credibility today.
Fantastic.
Isn't it true?
Yeah.
It's true. It's not just lovely, it's true.
But it's really lovely.
Do you know, I remember that the first, when it was the John Maxwell team, the first event, and I'd been in the business, in different areas for about 5 years before, and Susan was like, it's not ready for me.
It's not my cup of tea. That's
so she's coming to the first one, hadn't met John, I think you were reading your first book on the way there, or trying to catch up, and she's like, I'll probably join you for dinner, but I'm not holding hands. I'm not praying. I don't want to.
Not doing any of that stuff. If they're all in a circle praying, I'm not
I'm
doing
done with that. And then on the way home after she's like, this has changed my life.
I'm so glad. The first time, really.
The first time, yeah.
Wow.
I was crying in the taxi, about meeting John.
Yeah.
It was life changing.
Yeah, and this is ended up being a mutual love fest. But I'll tell you this. I will tell you this. I'll never forget Linda and my executive partner Kimberly. They both are not. They're not cynical, but they're very careful because we just get a lot of demands, a lot of requests. And I'll never forget the conversation. I don't know if it was the first year that you came, but I'll never forget that first time of just the authenticity of you, and of course you, Roddy, and going, wow. And that was the first thing he said. Aww. That's our kind of people.
Aww.
And hasn't that played out?
Yeah.
We should really talk some more about the book, though. Come on, guys. Come on.
Before we get to that, John's been deliberately helping you with your speaking, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, because that must be extraordinary for him because you travel so much. In fact, some people may not even know, how much time you spend with John. Give us a bit of background.
So just quickly, for 23 years, I've been with John. I started as a telesales representative and just have been given opportunity after opportunity to stretch my leadership. It was about 5 years ago that John, maybe 6, John said, hey, we've got to make you believable as a communicator. Now, let me back up and tell you a little bit about my background, because I did some communication. I didn't do a lot on big stages, but I did a little bit, traveled around, got paid to speak, but it was all in a really hypey, nonprofit kind of world, a church that really, it wasn't your content that indicated how well you did. It was how riled up, how excitable you can make the people. And then I get on John's stage and John says, hey, I need you to be believable for where I think we're going with you. He's not, and still continues to not try to make me the next John Maxwell. But he says people that have the responsibility of leading knows how to communicate. So let me pause right here and tell you, you are in the right environment with Roddy Galbraith. He will help you communicate, not just from stage, but from boardrooms at one-on-one. You need to be in this environment. If you plan on leading, you need to be believable as a communicator. So 5, 6 years ago, maybe 7, John says, you need to be believable if you're going to lead this thing. I'll never forget, y'all were probably there. I'll never forget getting on stage. I didn't want to be there. I was resistant. I had anger in my heart at John. I didn't want to be there. I'm leading companies, 7 multi-million-dollar companies. I've got my security somewhere else than a microphone in my hands. And John says, no, you're going to have to communicate. You got to be believable. I was far from believable. And what I love about John is over a course of a time. I'll never forget World Center Marriott, Orlando, Florida. We're sitting in his room at the Orlando Hotel, and he says, when are you going to stop trying to do it the way I would do it and start doing it the way you can do it? He said, Mark Cole, for 20 years at that time, or 17 years at that time, no one in the world has traveled with me more than you. Why don't you get up there and talk from that vantage point? Because there's not another person that can talk from that vantage point. And if I could say anything about credibility and leadership, find the thing that only you can say, the thing that only is true to you, the thing that you can speak with great confidence and certainty in, and start there. You can start building content later, but if you'll start from who you are and where you are before what you think you should say to impact people, there will be a confidence that comes that then gives you that credibility. So going back, oh, Roddy, there were years I wanted to fall in a hole. You know this. John would get up in front of 3,000 people and he'd go, well, Mark didn't do so good today, but stay there. 3,000 people. Mark didn't do so good today, but stay there because I'm going to work with him and we're going to get him better. I think I'm a little bit better, and I am a little bit better. But
you are
way better. Thank you.
Yeah.
Way better.
You were good at the beginning, but
I was good to my friends and loved ones. I was not good.
Mom was
really
proud.
Mom was not even proud. She was under the row. She was under the seat. But the point is, stick with your place of credibility, and you'll become a more confident communicator. And communication really is about confidence, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You teach that.
Yeah.
You give confidence to people. You and Susan, you guys give confidence to people every year, thousands and thousands of people. And sometimes their content gets better. Sometimes their story becomes more relatable. But here's what happens all the time. Roddy's process makes people more confident. And confidence breeds credibility.
Yeah, and we're going to see some examples of that a little later on, actually, of people that have been on stage. In fact, we've had so many, haven't we, up on stage? Yeah. Really great stories. People that have worked at it, follow the process. Yeah. The tagline, actually, you've touched on it here. The tagline for the book is the most
important message
is the one you've lived out. Yeah. So let me just try that again. So the tagline for the book is the most important message is the one you've lived out. Yeah. How do you try and incorporate everything you've learned from John and include that in your speaking?
My greatest compliment ever when I communicate, ever, and I now speak in front of people that speak to thousands, tens of thousands of people a week, and I'll get a compliment here and there. My greatest one is when people say, you were so authentic, you were believable. Mark, you're so vulnerable. I do our podcast, and we got to hurry up and announce this communication podcast that we're talking about, guys. And so
you heard it here
that's a teaser. That's a teaser. That's happening. And write it down, because I'm telling you, I'm excited about this idea, and I'll tell you that publicly right here. So on our podcast, I get these feedback and they say, man, you're so authentic. You're so vulnerable. And every time, Roddy, Susan, that matters a lot to me. You and I have shared about the hard path that we had trying to please people a long time, right? And I spent a long time trying to please people with my communication rather than just be who I am and let that please people. And when you build your platform on a pose, on a fake it till you make it, on a I'm gonna try it, but it's not from a place of credibility, it's a house of cards. It's gonna come down at some point. We've watched too many great communicators not last because they didn't build their platform on credibility. And so for me, 30 years of my life, I had a chance to lead, and I was posing and I was building this house of cards that crumbled at 29. So when I got another chance to lead in John's organization and communicate on a stage much bigger than me, I just went, you know what? You're either going to like me or hate me because of my vulnerability, but that's what you got. Right. Because what you see is what you should get.
Right.
And so I think it's huge. I think it's been big for me. I want to tell the story. I was thinking on the way over here today, being with you guys. I'll never forget, ever, when John was told, you're getting ready to meet Roddy, and I want him to tell you what he's been observing about your communication. And John literally rolled his eyes.
Was not expecting
he rolled his eyes. I love him, and he's very authentic. He puts everything out there, right, Susan?
Yeah.
That's one reason
try
we love
and
John.
be graceful.
And he's going, Mark, how long is this going to take? And then you took the floor and you began to walk through, I think it was about 25 minutes of things you've observed about what John does, intentionally or unintentionally. Come to find out, most of it was unintentional. What I loved about that moment, as much as seeing light bulbs turn on for John, one of the best communicators that we know, is he was doing it so naturally that it was credible. When we worked on it, now we've made courses off of it, we've made other people a lot better from Roddy's observations and teachings. But when we showed John that, he was as surprised as anybody else was. Just had no idea the intentional things. As you know why? Because he built it on credibility. Yeah. I'm going to be who I am. It's not going to be some made up thing. He cries a lot. And at 76, he's crying all the time. Well, John, he said, every time I think about the people that's getting ready to hear this message, my heart just swells within me that if I say it right, I'll be able to help them. Which is absolutely incredible. It's credibility.
So just on the, you might be able to shed some light on this. One of the things that we do with the Maxwell Leadership Team is the country transformation, of course. Right back at the first one, or I think it was the first one I went to, 2013 in Guatemala.
Yeah.
Like now, over 10%, 12% of the country has been through the values round tables. But wasn't there like a credibility issue with the first president or something? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so, and it's 17.8%.
17 now. That's almost 1 in 5 people in the whole country.
So today,
in 10 years.
I was sharing with them that it is almost 4 million out of the 17.3 in population that's now been through the round table. You helped start that.
Yeah.
You guys helped start that. So we started working with the president of Guatemala, and we've worked with several presidents now, and this has happened more than in Guatemala. After 2 years of him mandating his staff, the Supreme Court, the Justice Department, going through values roundtables of being credible, it was discovered that there was a ton of corruption in his administration. And for the first time ever in a Latin-speaking country, we had a president removed from office because of corruption. First time ever. Now, not only that...
Not a good first time.
No, listen, not a good first time ever. Not only that, before it was over, 475 people in that whole government ecosystem was put into a correctional institution because of the corruption.
Wow.
Now, here's what the point I think of that is, Roddy, is sometimes when you as a leader demonstrate credibility or you speak from that, it doesn't always unify people. Sometimes it divides people. John talks about vision. A lot of times as leaders, we think vision is all about unifying people to a common cause. No, good vision separates people so that the people that's not for your cause will move to the side. So it is with communication. Don't try to get a standing ovation as a conclusion to your great speech. Try to get somebody to resonate with who you are and what you're saying so they can become better. And I think John, who gets tons of standing ovations, as does Roddy, by the way, if you haven't heard him speak, the standing ovation is never the real point for these communicators. The real point is to be vulnerable so that it feels accessible to somebody that wants to do something different in their life.
Fantastic.
Amazing.
Well, anything else that we want to ask Mark while he's here?
So many things, but we've run out of time.
I think Mark wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Kimberly. So Kimberly, I think you should come up and
you should
give us a
too.
smile.
Yeah, I think you should.
You have to now.
I think you have to. No, it's coming. Come on.
You just sneak in the back.
Just sneak, like between the Christmas
This is
tree.
the real
You look
boss, right?
gorgeous.
This is how we got Mark.
This is the real boss. And by the way, for bringing her up here, what this means is
She's gone already.
By bringing her up here because she really wanted to be up here, it means I have to come back. I get to come back now.
I do have to
Fantastic.
say that, Mark, you do emulate this law so
Thank you.
perfectly that you are who you say you are. You're on and off stage with your staff.
Thank you.
It's not just about being on platform and speaking. It's who you are, and
Doing
it's
the right
from
thing.
the heart.
And,
Will you do
and
me
we
a favor?
feel that,
Will you do me a favor?
of course.
If that ever doesn't measure up, will you come knock me on the side of the head?
Just the fact that you say that.
I mean it.
It's-
I mean it. I mean it. I tell my staff, I tell you guys, I respect you and honor you so much. So glad we're standing shoulder to shoulder to do it. If you ever see me out of line, come tell me. And if I don't listen, go tell John. He'll knock me out.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks
Fantastic.
for being with
Thank
us.
you.
Absolutely. Thank
Boom.
you. Boom.
Perfect. That's a wrap. Thank you.
Let me do this again sometime.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I mean it. Not in this segment, but yeah.
Yeah.
I want to talk about. I really January. I want to be doing a communication podcast.
Fantastic. The sound back. There we go. January communication. But what a great guest Mark is. Fantastic. That was really good. Really good segment. Loads of great stuff. Lots of you putting comments up. Thank you, Mark.
Isn't he wonderful?
Yeah, really, really good. So, what was your biggest takeaway from
energy.
Mark's sharing? Susan, I saw you writing down loads of notes.
To be honest, I was reading all the comments and they're just, amazing. Yeah.
So
Really good.
put your favourite comment up or your favourite takeaway from Mark's segment. And what did you have, Suze? What stood out to you?
I had lots of things.
Give us one to start with.
When John said to Mark that you have to be believable if you want to lead this thing. Now, Mark was leading it.
And had been, yeah.
And had been for decades, but that just shows how important communication is, because he had to take that next step as a leader to be more credible, which I thought was...
absolutely. And I think he talked a little bit about John at the beginning as well, didn't he? And because I asked how important is communication been for John's journey, and he said, and I'd never heard him say this before. John sees himself as a speaker first and then a writer. So
which makes sense when his beginnings, speaking at the church, and actually when you think of it, it does.
But he's a
sense.
subject matter expert in leadership. This is the thing that pains me a little bit. He's known as the world's #1 leadership expert. Not as the world's #1 communication expert, but he should be known for the world's #1 communication expert.
Incredible communicator.
Because it's why he's the world's #1 leadership expert. Yeah, that's a good point.
Should I tell you my other things?
Please, yeah. Number 2.
So I love, and maybe because personally it really relates to me, or resonates with me, that Mark was so resistant to becoming a better communicator.
Yeah, right.
So he didn't want to be on stage, and he's not exaggerating.
Right.
He didn't want to be like the front man. He didn't want to be the famous one. He didn't want to, fit that role.
Yeah.
And so he's not exaggerating how uncomfortable it made him, but I think it shows his humility and the humility that we need to have if we want to become better communicators, because he got up and did it live, in front of 3,000 people at an event. He was basically growing as a communicator. So I think it's really reassuring for people that, I definitely feel I don't want to be a speaker, but I do want to learn how to communicate better, and having that humility to actually go out and give it a try.
Yeah, to be prepared to be a learner again.
Yeah.
Well, what a great environment though. You talk about the perfect kind of growth environment, high challenge and high support.
Yeah.
John saying, "No, Mark, you're off you go."
Like when you're teaching the kids how to swim,
drop them in the deep end.
What did he say? Communication breeds confidence.
Amy picked up on that.
Builds
Yeah, I saw that flash up.
credibility.
Yeah.
Is that what he said?
I saw Amy post it and
Communication
somebody
breeds
commented on it.
confidence.
Confidence builds credibility.
Love it. Chef's kiss.
Back to what I was just saying.
Sorry.
I forgot what I was saying now.
Don't worry, I've got something else that I liked.
Oh,
I'm so
okay,
sorry.
It'll come back to me. No, it's fine. Oh, high challenge, high support. That was it. High challenge, high support. So being shoved out in front of the audience, but then John Maxwell saying, "Okay, Mark, here's some notes for you."
Yeah.
Continue, because most people don't realise how much Mark travels with John. It's all the time practically. They're on the road. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead. So that was 2. What's number 3?
I think there was lots of talk about vulnerability and about being yourself, and there were some questions in the chat about what vulnerability really is. And I think that what I took away from it is that it's not random. It's very intentional. So it's not just I'm communicating, so I'm just going to spill my guts out.
Right.
Indiscriminately and tell you all my deepest, darkest secrets and fears. That's not what vulnerability.
Right. Well, that's not helpful vulnerability.
Yeah. And it's not really vulnerability. That's kind of there's a touch of attention seeking in
Poor
there.
me, I'm the biggest failure ever. No one's a bigger failure than me.
Because it's still all about the audience. So when you're being vulnerable, I just like the way that Mark, it's very intentional.
Yeah.
And being yourself, but still with the goal of serving the audience. It's not like
Right.
being yourself and, well, I'm just me and you just take me
Take it
as
or
I
leave it.
am.
Yeah, no, it's to help them. And John talked about that last week, I think, didn't he? With he says, like, you got to connect so that you've got common ground, but not just being one of the guys. You've got to be, when I go in to speak to an audience, I want to connect with them as I'm your friend, but I'm here to help you.
Yeah.
I'm equipped to help you. I've got stuff that can help you. What else? Was that it? I've got one. Can I share mine?
Summer was just saying that Mark's humility to ask for help as a communicator is commendable.
That is great, isn't it? Because
Yeah,
most
I
people
agree.
hide their,
or just
pretend to be
that
perfect.
you're better than you are.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to seem like you're not an expert.
Right. No, that's good. Building on yours about being a leader, I think speaking is a great way to establish your credibility as a leader within an organization, because if you can stand up and speak convincingly, people see you differently.
I'm holding my hands like that. Sorry, I just...
That's okay. I don't think anyone noticed until you said, "Oh, look what I'm doing." Look what I'm doing. Okay, you ruined it now.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I just...
Right, what's next? Let's pick out some of the thing. Oh, did you have more? Go ahead.
No. Well, I'm just...
More comments?
Crystal said that the aha for her was that true credibility comes from speaking from the places of experience.
Right.
So it's affirming that what I'm speaking on is exactly where I'm supposed to be.
That's good. That could be a book winner. You never know. Unless anyone's got something better, that could well be a book winner. Did you put it in as what credibility is, or was that just a general comment? How do we know?
I'll know.
Okay.
I think that she...
Well done, Crystal. That sounds
she
good.
was saying her aha from watching Mark.
They could be the same thing, of course, couldn't they?
Yeah.
Okay, so last week we talked about the law of connecting. Can we move into this now, or do you have more things to pick up?
No.
So last week we talked about the law of connecting, and this is one of my...
I don't think he wants you to be in that picture.
I've got about 10 of these.
We should
it's
just
me and
show
John
them one after the other.
And John is either pushing me out, hiding me, or like I'm smiling at the camera and Susan and John are chatting about something completely different. So they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That was like the message from last week, wasn't it? It's all about the audience, and it's about connecting with them first of all.
Yeah.
But when they do know how much you... This is my second favourite photo of John. When they do...
I don't think it's the most flattering of me. Look at that double chin. But anyway.
You look like you're having fun. You look
I shouldn't
joyful.
say that out loud, should I?
No.
Oh, but you're doing rabbit ears on John.
Well, that's what I was
as well.
saying, yeah. That's a good thing, isn't it? When you see a picture, John says this, if you want to know how important you think other people are and how important you yourself is, when you see a group picture, what's the first thing you do? Where am I? And if you look good, it's a good picture. It's true, isn't it? Anyway...
I look happy anyway.
You look
jolly,
very joyful.
I would say jolly.
Jolly joyful. So the teaching point of this, though, is that, first of all...
Get back to the teaching point.
When they do know how much you care, then they do care how much you know.
So you're establishing how much you care for the audience first.
Because they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
But when they do care, when they do know how much you care, they do then
you
care
can't
how
be
much you
like,
know. It's not
"Watch
just
this, guys."
about being fun without
Yeah.
providing value. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I think of these as like the foundations of influence.
That's a really bad picture. that
It's a
you picked.
foundation.
I know it's a foundation.
Do you know how
but
long
it's
it took
very
me to
literal.
find that? Well, that's the whole point. Is because like if it's built on sand, we all know what happens
What
if
do
you
you
build
think,
on
guys?
sand. Does that illustrate the point as
Just
a
doesn't
metaphor
please
for
me.
foundation?
Doesn't please me aesthetically. Anyway, please get to your lovely little.
What you're not
blocks.
if you don't like that, you're not going to like this. So we've got to build the foundation, a foundation of rock, a solid foundation, a foundation that we can build influence upon. Because remember, these are the foundations of influence. So the first kind of foundation we're going to pour, look at the graphic there. You see how the first foundation we're going to pour
I prefer that.
is connection. We need to connect with the audience. Connecting is going from this, remember, to like somewhat interested in what you're going to say. We need to, the audience ideally feel like they know, like, and trust us. When they do, when we have got that foundation, then the next kind of layer of that foundation is credibility. So the credibility builds on top of the connection, and then influence can sit upon that. Too often, I think we try and jump straight to the influence. Do you want to buy some coaching? Do you want to buy some coaching? Do you want to buy some coaching? And if there isn't the connection, then there isn't the credibility, then the influence has nothing to sit upon.
One person liked your foundations picture. Well done, Jeff.
I'll take it. Thanks, Jeff. I vote for Jeff to get the book this week. We should have 2 prizes.
One for Roddy's favourite and one for the actual winner.
Okay, well, it goes downhill from here. So here, like, this is that process of living something out, working on something. There's something you want, you're bored with your current life, or you're stuck, and so you go through a process of trying to get it. First of all, you're excited. I'm going to do this. I'm motivated. I'm looking forward to this. Then you're kind of challenged by the first thing that happens, and you fail maybe. But if you're going to succeed, you keep going. You deal with the struggle. You find a way through. Someone probably helps you. Then you succeed. So that's like a typical journey. It probably looks more like this than the words, but they're the kind of stages, aren't they, as we go for something.
My little drops are a lot bigger than that.
Yeah, and often, like, the steep climb there I've exaggerated so we can talk about it.
Yeah.
Normally it's like micro wins,
Yeah.
isn't it? And then three steps
Don't
forward and
zoom
7
in
back.
on my one.
So that's that kind of journey. But if we're talking about helping people from our experience, remember the context here is, what have you lived out? What have you learned? What should I teach on? What have I lived out? Well, this is you living it out. We can see the kind of the phases here then of, this is before we went through whatever it was we lived out. This is while we're going through it. And this is after. Too often, I think, we get excited and then we want to teach about what we're going to do. And it doesn't have the same credibility, because the people we're talking to are thinking to themselves, well, you haven't done it yet. You know, you're telling me what you're going to do, or you're telling me what I should do, and you haven't lived it out, so it doesn't have that credibility. If you're in the middle of it and you're saying, oh yeah, life's really hard at the moment, but I'm going to do this and it's all going to come together, then the audience are probably thinking, yeah, I'll check back. Let me know how it goes. And then, you know, if you get some success with that, if it works, then maybe, maybe then I'll listen to you. Maybe I'll come back and listen to you. Afterwards is ideal. What have you lived out? So now you're talking about it from the other side, what you've done, what you've been through, and ideally what you've learned from it. So that part, that reliving it, is different from telling them what you've done, just what you've achieved. The reliving it is taking us back to the beginning and reliving it so that we can see what you went through. We can experience what you went through to get the thing that you learned. And it sounds like a little difference, but it's not. It's a big difference, because up here, if you just tell it from the end, I'm a success, I've had all this success, look at me.
Connect.
Yeah, you're not going to connect, because they're down here still struggling with the thing that you found a way through. And so you get their respect if you tell them about your wins, maybe, but you connect on common ground. So you've got to go back to them and relive it. That's why the reliving is so important, because you're taking them through, and they can, when you say, I sat there and I didn't know what to do and I was stuck and I thought it was over, that's what they relate to, because that's probably where they are. So taking them on that journey really helps them get the goodness that you've got for them, because they see that you're just like them. So your credibility really does come from your life experiences. You earn their respect from sharing your wins, and you earn their love from sharing your failures. It's good, isn't it?
Very good.
John says in the book, trust is your greatest asset. And I think it's worth just touching on this quickly. If we think about connecting as know, like, leading to trust, there's an order there. First of all, they need to get to know you. Then they need to like you. And then they can trust you if they get to know you. So there's and you talk about this a lot, Suze, you know, that authenticity is so important, isn't it? Because otherwise, if you're not letting them in, if you've got this tough exterior where you've got your protective bubble and you're not prepared to let them get to know you, and you're not going to be vulnerable, they're just seeing a role, aren't they? They're just seeing you pretending to be something that's not really that helpful. And so they don't get to know you. You're not being authentic. They can't trust you.
I love the fact that so much of the chapter of the law of credibility is actually about authenticity and being yourself and sharing your own journey, because I thought it was really going to be more about like accomplishments, like what boxes have you ticked
Tell them
that
what all the
make
things
you an
you've done.
expert.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Which I think we get a bit stuck.
Yeah.
And I posted about this yesterday on social media. I don't know if it's like women especially, but like
I don't think it's men
talking themselves out of opportunities because they don't feel like they're qualified enough.
Right.
But actually, if you've lived that experience, then you are credible.
So he also talks about getting in touch with yourself, doesn't he? Not just
Yeah.
being vulnerable, but getting to know yourself and
Yeah.
learn who you are, getting in touch with your own feelings and
Well, don't you
thinking
think
and
if
actions.
if you want an audience to know, like, and trust you, you have to know, like, and trust yourself. Like, I do actually think that's a really big thing.
It is. Well, yeah, I don't think it's a simple step,
like,
though, is it? That's a
no,
lot of work.
But then I think as well, just going back to your diagram, that I don't
You like
think
it. You like it.
I like the diagram, but I also think this big star at the top doesn't mean perfection.
No, it's
So
endless.
it's not saying,
yeah.
"Oh, I'm at the end of my journey and I am wonderful. So now please speak to me.
Yeah.
You know, please
Worship
listen
at my
to me
feet, yeah.
because I've arrived." You can still be, but it's the area of expertise
So
or whatever
you've learned
you're speaking
something
in.
from
Yeah.
experience.
So there might be other areas that you're still working on,
Definitely,
and that
yeah.
you can share.
Yeah.
But the bit that you're teaching on, you want to be a little bit
That's the bit you've
further
lived
ahead.
out. Yeah, and John says, doesn't he? Everything worthwhile is uphill. Everything worthwhile is uphill, and it's uphill all the way. You don't get there and then you're done. It's uphill forever.
Yeah.
If you're a lifelong learner, then it's all uphill. Excuse me. All right, what's next? Okay, so here he talks about 5 things I thought we'd just quickly touch on before we wrap up. Be transparent. Be transparent. Be transparent. He says people don't want perfect communicators, but they do want authentic ones. We've talked a little bit
I
about
don't
that. haven't
like perfect communicators. What is a perfect communicator anyway?
we? And I think, that really you want kind of conversational, and conversational is imperfections, isn't it?
Yeah.
But a perfect conversational delivery may be, and there's not one way of doing it, but efficient, because you're trying to add value to the audience. So you want it to be, I think people want to think there's a magic to it. A magic of the first time, and you're making it up and it's emerging. Like now, this is, we've got some idea, we've got some loose structure, but we don't know how it's going to happen. We don't know what people are going to post, and it's kind of emerging together, isn't it? And we're all a part of it, and so I think it's special to be a part as it emerges. So it's not about reciting a perfect speech. People don't talk like that, so people don't connect with that. Another quote in here from Jamie Kern Lima. I managed to snap this, actually. Susan was really annoyed because I just come off stage and she was just going on.
Yeah.
And she was sitting chatting to John before
She's
going
a
up.
sweetheart.
She really is. Yeah, and there was no time for pictures, but I just happened to see her in the groom and said, "Oh, do you mind if I get a quick selfie?" And Susan saw it afterwards, and she's like, "When did you get that? When did
You always make me sound so aggressive. Wow.
When did you get that?" So anyway, the quote is the important thing. She says, and John quotes her in the book. You read it, Susan. It's a bit too small for my eyes.
Authenticity doesn't automatically guarantee success, but inauthenticity guarantees failure.
That's true, isn't it? It's nice.
I think that's actually it's quite clever, really, because being authentic isn't enough. It doesn't mean that you're going to be a successful person.
But if you're
It's
not
everything,
authentic, you're
but
definitely
if you're
going to
not
fail.
authentic, then what was it? How did Mark describe it in the interview? I
Can't
can't
remember.
remember, but however he described it was really good. Just that fall of like.
Put it in the chat if you remember that bit. So be transparent, be consistent. Nothing is easier than saying words. Nothing is harder than living them day by day. That's certainly true, isn't it? What's the next one? Be a good example. I love this one by Andrew Carnegie.
The older I get, I pay less attention to what people say and more attention to what they do.
Isn't that great? That's so true, isn't it? So simple, but you don't tell me, show me.
Yeah.
Be competent, of course. A confident, likable expert is a great way to sum that up. And be trustworthy. Never underestimate the compounding effects of consistency. And John, this is a great point. Your credibility compounds over time. All right, we better put our special guest speaker up. I didn't realize how quickly time flies when you're having fun, and we're having so much fun. The time is flying by real quick. So here's our guest speaker. Do you want to introduce her? Or
well, I can't remember what year Janice joined the team. Janice Pitchford.
Right at the beginning, I think.
Yeah, very. Her and her husband Larry, and she shares a very powerful story.
Tag her in the.
I will.
Put it in the. What did we agree we were going to say? Put it in the chat. Tag her on Facebook or whatever. So, okay, here we go. Watch this. You're going to love this. You're going to love this.
the wonderful pleasure of being a registered nurse for 43 years, but today I want to tell you about my most unforgettable patient. She was 2 weeks from her 14th birthday when she was diagnosed with a particularly painful and deadly form of leukemia. But I watched this young woman in awe as she navigated the next few months with a maturity and a strength way beyond her years. One of the hardest things about having chemotherapy is losing your hair. Think about being a 14-year-old girl and losing your hair. But I will never forget the day in the hospital when she ran her fingers through her hair, came out with a handful of thick blonde curls. After a screech for "Mom," she said, "Get me a garbage can." And being the die-hard War Eagle Auburn fan that she was, she said, "I've always been a War Eagle, now I'm gonna have to be a bald eagle." She would drive up with her family to a stoplight, look at the people in the car next to her, smile, and off would come the wig. And she would dissolve into laughter at their shocked expressions. I will never forget her generosity. Many people gave her gifts, monetary gifts, during the time she was sick. She would get in a wheelchair, go down to the gift shop, buy gifts, but not for herself, for the other patients on the oncology floor. She was generous almost to a fault. I will never forget her determination. At a time when she could have chosen not to go to school, she struggled to go to school. Every day that she could be in the classroom, she was there if she could stand, walk, and her blood counts were high enough. She finished that year with all A's and academic honors. I will never forget her wisdom. And yes, she was wise beyond her years. Nothing speaks to that more than the day she patted the bed beside her and said, "Dad, we need to have a talk." By that time, our 14-year-old daughter was in intractable pain. She looked up at her dad and said, "Daddy, if you could choose to die quickly or to suffer but have some time, which would you choose?" After composing himself, he said, "Dawn, I would choose to suffer, but have time to say goodbye, to make sure nothing that needs to be said goes unsaid." She said, "Daddy, I would too." And that's what our daughter did. She prepared to say goodbye. She wrote letters and cards, made a tape, made sure that everybody knew how much she loved them. So on that warm September night, when we watched our beautiful daughter slip into eternity with grace and dignity, she left a mark on our lives we will never forget.
Oh my goodness. What a incredible presentation that is, incredible story. I mean, we're running out of time and we've got to rush on, but I feel like
about credible.
yeah. And the reason we thought Janice would be perfect for this week is because imagine that you know, God forbid, you've lost a child or you're struggling with something of that magnitude.
Yeah.
The only person who can speak to you with any credibility or authority is somebody that's been through something like that, something
And
the
to
same
do
or
it with
something worse.
such poise and such grace.
Amazing, yeah. So elegant,
it's
so
really
classy.
dignified.
Yeah, really, really good. Thank you so much, Janice. I wish we had
Janice,
more time to
Yeah, we love you.
to comment on that, because there's so much from a communication perspective as well. So much that's great. All right. Well, we said we're going to try and finish on time, and so I said I'd save a couple of minutes at the end, real quick. If you're
It
interested,
doesn't sound sure. I want to be a speaker? Question mark. It should be I want to be a speaker! Exclamation point.
I was thinking, if you're asking yourself, I want to be a speaker. Oh no, that's more of a statement, isn't it? Yeah, you're right. You should do the battle. Anyway, you can go to speak.leadwithjohn.com right now, speak.leadwithjohn.com, and fill out a real simple form and book a no obligation free discussion with one of the program advisors. They'll ask you some questions You'll answer the questions. They'll ask you a little bit about yourself. You'll ask about the program, and very quickly you'll see if it's a fit. If it's not a fit, no problem. No problem. If it is a fit,
We'd
it'll be
love
one
to
of the
have you
best.
on the team. And
Yeah.
if you are on the team and you're watching live or on the replay, maybe pop in the comments your experience of being on the team. Maybe tell us what year you first came to the IMC event.
And whether or not you think people should at least jump on a call with the program. We're
Yeah.
not asking you to put your hand in your pocket. We're saying just find out, because if you're like all of us, over 50,000 people now in the community, if you're interested in developing your speaking, this is a godsend for you. Not just your speaking, but your coaching, your leadership. You know, it's a fantastic community in so many different ways. So
Yeah.
just find out, what have you got to lose? Jump on a call with a program advisor. Go to speak.leadwithjohn.com. It could be the best phone call you ever made. And if I'm wrong, if we're wrong, if it's not a great use of your time, what have you lost? Just a few minutes.
Yeah, it's
worth it.
wonderful. We'd love to have you on the team.
Okay, it's 11 o'clock exactly. We finished. Woo! So we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week with our winner of the prize.
With our winner for
I feel like
credibility.
there will be an announcement coming. We may be wearing some Christmas attire next week.
Let's
can
just
join.
commit. Let's just commit. Is it
I
hat
think
or
we're going to
hat
wear
or jumper?
Christmas attire, hat or sweater.
Sweater, or not both. I don't really want to wear a jumper. I get too
If you
hot.
share a picture of you with your book, maybe wearing any kind of Christmas, or maybe it's a little pet, a little doggy in a little Christmas outfit with the book.
What?
Tag Roddy Galbraith or use the hashtag 16 Laws, and we might pick a bonus winner.
Oh, we should have two winners for the jumpers. We should have a main winner and a runner-up winner for the jumpers. Definitely. Two more signed books. We got loads of them. Yeah.
You up for that?
Okay, guys. So let's say goodbye to the people on Facebook. Thank
Goodbye,
you for being
people
with
on
us. We love
Facebook.
you. We appreciate you. And we'll see you soon.